Hello all and welcome to Crochet Designs. My name is Mary and in today's tutorial we are working on this gorgeous little sweatband that you see right here specifically for your father on Father's Day this weekend. Now, if your country does not have a Father's Day right now, you can create this for our up-and-coming Christmas projects. Excuse me, we're getting very close to Christmas now, aren't we? So there you go. All right, so this is a little sweatband that we are going to make and create today using cotton. Now, I'll talk about the colour of the cotton in a minute, but for your wristband or sweatband, if you will, you really should use a cotton. Now, cotton is really important when you are wiping your brow, because if you are using acrylic, which can be a little bit harsh on your skin, or wool, which can have you break out an allergy, or if you are allergic to cotton, use one of the other two. But for perspiration or anything that involves water, I think cotton is your best bid. In the meantime, my little skein is a little bit of a mess. I've been using it for other projects. As you can see, you will need some green. Now, the colour combination chosen by one of our subscribers, Jan, on our live antics. Now, normally we do live antics at 10 a.m. Saturday mornings, Melbourne, Australia time. Marry that up with your country. This week we did it on our Wednesdays live at 4 p.m. once again, Melbourne, Australia time. Now, the reason was I'd forgotten completely about Father's Day this weekend that we have here in Melbourne, Australia. But in the meantime, you can create your piece using this cotton just for yourself. And in fact, that one there suits my size. And we'll talk about size throughout the video anyway. So don't stress too much about size, yeah? Now, this cotton is Bendigo Woollen Mills Cotton. It is an older colour, but they have a similar one, and it's very close to this called Canopy. It is a green, and it's a Christmas green, if you will. I call it a Christmas green because it looks like a Christmas green. Now, I used 8 grams, but if you're going to make yours bigger, like I mentioned throughout the tutorial, you might need 10, 12 or 15 grams, roughly around that much, which is absolutely nothing. It's really nothing if you think about it. Yeah, it's very, very good idea for a small project. All right, so that's that. And this yarn, it calls for, it is an 8-ply or a DK weight or a number 3 lightweight overseas. Now, it calls for a 4mm hook, which I actually am using today. You will also need a pair of scissors. You will need a 1-stitch marker. I occasionally swap mine over to different colours just for fun because that's what I do, no particular reason. Now, if you don't have a stitch marker, you can use a safety pin, hairpin, whatever you've got in stock. You don't have to have these fancy little things, yeah? And you will definitely need a sewing needle. You need to weave in 2 ends at the end, or more if you have little pieces dangling off your work. I only had the 2 threads, so that's it. All right, I'm not going to talk anymore. We're just going to get started creating this gorgeous piece. And we're going to start by making a slip knot. And a slip knot is, let's get nice and close, grabbing the tail end of your yarn, wrap it around your finger once and twice, holding it there, holding it down there, passing your back loop halfway over your finger, hold it there, pass the other loop all the way over, pop your hook in and give it a tug. Make sure that your tail is relatively long so it's easier for you to weave in later. Don't leave it this short because you're not going to be able to weave that in. All right, we need a bit of tail because we're going to adjust our sizing later with the tail. You'll work that out later. But in the meantime, we're going to make 35 chains. And a chain is yarn over our hook, pulling our loop through once, yarn over twice, yarn over 3 times, and 4 and 5. All right, so what I want you to do is continue making chains until you reach your 35 chains. I'm not going to head off. I'm just going to let you watch the stitches in fast motion. All right, so I'm going to pop this on fast and you continue your stitches. You need to do another 30 stitches. Okay, so 6, and 35. All right, so what you have is that. Okay, now we're going to slip stitch to join. Now, before we do, A lot of people struggle with keeping their chains straight, and they use all these tips and tricks, but the reality is when you are working your chains, your flat edge of the chain is in your hands, yeah? The bubbled edge is on the other side. Really, all you need to do is hold your work here, just grab that flat edge, flat, flat, flat. Make sure you've got the flat edge only in your hand, like so. And then pop your hook in the top loop there, passing your tail down. All right, grab your working yarn, pull your loop through and pull it through to the loop on your hook. Now, if you didn't move anything, what you would have is your flat edges in front of you like that. Your bubbled edge is like that. I'll give you a close-up look of the bubbled and the flat in a minute, but your flat should be able to sit down on the table with the bubbled underneath and the flat edge on top. What do I mean by flat? Let me show you close up. That is the flat edge of your work. When you turn it over, you've got these little bumps, which we like to call the back bumps. But we are working on our flat edge. I hope that makes sense. A lot of people do all these tips and tricks, but all they need to remember is the way we crochet, yeah? Make sure that stitch is a little tight. You don't want to leave a little hole at the base there, yeah? So what we're going to do now is chain one, and in the same stitch you're going to put a single crochet. So pop your hook in that stitch, pull the loop through, 2 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through both those loops. Now what I want you to do is pop a stitch marker directly in the top 2 loops of that stitch. Right? Grab another stitch marker, just for fun. We're going to pop it in the loop for a minute because we are going to try our piece. And if you accidentally pull it, it's going to come undone. All right? But it won't come undone now because you've got that there. What I want you to do is grab your little piece. Let's bring this out a little bit so you can see what I'm doing. And just pop it on your wrist, over your bump right there. And it should sit loose on your wrist with about a finger and a half worth of space. If it's that tight, you need to add more stitches. If it's really, really loose, you need to take this undone and take a couple of stitches undone. All right. Now, just remember, you are making it for your fellow. So if it's for your fellow, it's likely his wrist is going to be a tiny, tiny little bit bigger than yours here. So that kind of little bump that we have there, our little knuckles and so on, his might be that little tiny bit bigger. So make sure this fits on you quite loosely, but not too loose, like 2 fingers worth or a finger and a half worth of space in between. That's why I say don't worry too much about measurements. It will stretch. So, heads up there, the more he wears it, it will stretch. Okay, you need to find the right side of your work, which I just messed up right there. And if you wanted to, you could have done a couple of more single crochets before measuring it. That would have helped that from not turning around much. All right, so once again, you are working on the flat edge of your work. And you are popping single crochets in the top loop there of every stitch across. So pop your hook in, pull a loop through, 2 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through 2, and so on. It's super easy round. That's all you're doing for this round. The next round will be different, but for this round here, that is all you are doing. Okay? Yeah, super easy, yeah? All the way across. All right. Now, as I mentioned before, the colour combination was chosen by the lovely Jan on one of our lives, and Jan has chosen the green, and it suits perfectly for this particular piece. And there we go. All right, I'm going to pop this on fast, and I want you to keep doing your single crochets until we get to the second last stitch, and I'll meet you there once you're done. And off we go. Right, so here I am at, I'm not sure if it's the last stitch or the second last. It's the second last, right there. I think I said second last anyway, didn't I? And the last is right there. You can see there's one little V left before the next stitch. Pop your hook in that last V and complete your stitch. Now what I want you to do is, before we do anything else, this is our stitches that we're working in, right? We have a front loop of the stitch right there, and we also have a back loop. I hope that's close enough. There we go. There's your front and there's your back. There's your front and there's your back. Now we're going to be working with our very next stitch, but our very next stitch is not going to be single crochet. It's going to be what we call a half double crochet slip stitch. Not a half double crochet stitch, a half double crochet slip stitch. And we're going to start the first one by popping it in the full stitch. We're not going to slip stitch anything here. What we'll do first is we just take out our stitch marker, pop the yarn over the hook, and in that stitch that you had your stitch marker in, you pop your hook in and you pull the loop through like that. And you have these 3 loops. Now I found when I was practicing this stitch, it pays to pop your thumbnail or even your thumb in between that loop and the 2 loops on your hook. That way you can pull the loop through like normal. Okay, that is a slip stitch. It's a little tricky to work with the first few times. I'll show you a few more times so you get it. Pop your stitch marker in that slip stitch, but try not to pull too much with it, okay? So pop your stitch marker in there and just leave it gently sitting there. Your very next stitch is right here, okay? You're in here. Your very next one is right there. From now on, we are popping our half double crochet slip stitch in the back loop only. So grab the yarn over your hook. Normally you would have gone into both those loops like that. You're going to come out of that one and go into the back loop only. All right, pop your loop through like so. You've got your 3 loops, pop your nail there and pull that loop through the last 2 loops. Yarn over your hook, go right into the very next back loop, pull the loop through, pop your thumb there or your nail there and just pull it through. In other words, all you're doing is going into your back loop and pulling the loop through all loops. That's really all you're doing, yeah? Like so, all the way through. All right, so that's about it, guys. It's really quite simple. The only thing is, if it really annoys you, pop your thumb there and pull the loops through like so. I found that was the easiest way to do it, and just making sure you are going into your back loops. All right, I'm not going to sit here and let you watch me do this, especially if you're taking your time and doing it properly. You can re-watch this part if you go back to the beginning, which the time zone is up there, and continue in this round. When you get to your in fact, grab your green stitch marker and pop it right next to the stitch before your stitch marker. When you get to that stitch, don't do the stitch there, leave it there, and we will do it at the end of the round. So continue doing your half double crochet slip stitch in the back loop only, all the way through. Get to the first stitch marker right here, and I'll meet you there once you're done. Alrighty guys, so here we are at the end of the round. Now I asked you to get to that stitch marker, the first one. So we're going to take that first stitch marker out, and you're going to do your last half double crochet slip stitch in that last stitch just before your stitch marker. So do your normal stitch all the way through. What I want you to do now is count your stitches once again and make sure you still only have 35 stitches from that stitch marker all the way over to here. All right, so once you've counted your stitches, you're going to start your round again. Now this is going to be, the round we're going to do now is going to be the repeat round. Before, when you did your first stitch, you put your half double crochet slip stitch in the full stitch. Now what you're going to do is pop it in the back loops like you've been doing with the rest of your stitches. You're not going to be slip stitching or closing up or anything. You're just going to take out that stitch marker. Make sure you remember where it is. Yeah. Pop the yarn over your hook, and that's the stitch right there. Instead of putting it through the whole stitch, you're putting it through the back loop only of that stitch. Little tricky, the first one. Pull the loop through and pull it through all of the loops on your hook like so. And then pop your stitch marker back in there. Really important to use a stitch marker in these rounds, and I'll explain in a minute. Right, now we're going to do exactly what we did before. However, now because we're working on half double crochets, we've made 3 loops. There's your front loop, there's your back loop, and right back there is a 3rd loop. Okay, see that loop that we are in right there? We need to go into that loop, that, not the back, that area there. That's called the 3rd loop. You don't want to go in that one. And I'll show you a close-up so you know what I mean. All right, so we're going to do our half double crochet slip stitch. Yarn over your hook. There's your front loop. And right behind it is your back loop. You're popping your hook in the back loop. Pull the loop through. Before you pull it through, just check the back. There is another loop directly under it. You don't want to be in that loop directly under it. There. You want to be where you are. All right. So pull that loop, pop your nail in there, pull that loop through all your loops, and that's the way it's done. Yarn over your hook, not your first loop, but your 2nd loop, if you want to call it that. Pull the loop through and pull it through to the loop on your hook. And once again, not the first, but the 2nd. Pull the loop through and pull it through to the loop on your hook. All right, so what you're going to get now, it's going to have like a knitted look, yeah? So keep doing that, popping your loop into your next, there's your first, there's your 2nd, or it should be your back, and then just pull the loop through like so. All right, so what I want you to do is continue doing that in all the back loops. Get to the stitch just before your stitch marker, and I will meet you there, and we'll talk about what we're going to do next. Alrighty guys, here we are at the end of the round. I have 1 more stitch left right there. Now don't miss that stitch or you will end up with a gap. Yeah, and that's another thing I wanted to mention. When you're doing your slip stitch, it pays to turn your hook down, and that pulls the slip stitch through a lot easier. All right, there's a lot of tips with this. Now it is a tricky stitch, but once you get the hang of it, you get the hang of it. All right, so once again, we're going to repeat what we just did here. That first stitch, we're going to take out our stitch marker like so. And you're going to yarn over your hook, go into the back loop of the first stitch, pull the loop through, pull it through to the loop on your hook, pop your stitch marker back in, and guess what? That's pretty much the repeat, really, for your piece. All right, so I'm not going to sit here and let you watch me do all these rounds because I have faith that you can do them on your own. All right, so all you're doing is repeating this last round that we just did. Let me pop a stitch marker in there so I don't lose my thread. The last round that we just did over and over again until you get to your size. Now what we have done so far is 1 round of single crochets and 2 rounds of your half double crochet slip stitch. So what you need to do is do another 10 rounds, that's including the one that we just started. So you need to do 10 more rounds of your half double crochet slip stitch. Then meet me back here and we'll talk about measurements. But before we go, grab your piece. All right, now the base is going to be on the base part of your wrist. The top bit will tend to now spread out a little bit. That's normal. That's the look we're going for, all right? So you pop your wrist in your piece, and as long as the base has a little bit of leeway there and it's not like this, then you're okay. If it's like this, you need to take it undone and add some more chains. That's got plenty of leeway, all right? So take it off, and your job now is to actually just do another 10 more rounds. Meet me back here and then we will talk about measurements. So altogether you should have 13 rounds, including the single crochet. Single 1, 2 rounds of your half double crochet slip stitch. Do another 10 more rounds now, and I'll meet you back here once you're done. Alrighty guys, so here we are at the end of round 12. Now we're going to work on the end in a minute because it's a little crooked, as you can see. It's higher than the other side. And the same with your base. We're going to work on those in a minute. But for now, and this is not a compulsory thing, just flip your work. But it's nice to know the measurements of your piece. Now my piece measures around 6 centimeters or 2.5 inches, yeah? If Dad is taller than 5'5", my suggestion would be to make another 3 rounds. Just go up to, say, 3 inches or something like that. Not necessary, really. It's not necessary, but I would try it on yourself and see what it looks like on you. Now, when you look at it, you'll have one side that's wider than the other. Now, the reason is because that was our beginning round and we did it in a single crochet on purpose so that you'll know that that goes at the wrist. So the widest part of your piece, you pop it on your, let me bring that out a little bit. You pop it on your hand and you just slide it up. And there it is. All right. So have a look at what it looks like on your hand. Don't worry about this. We'll sort these little bumps out later. But have a look at what it looks like on your hand. And if you think you need a few more rounds, just do a few more rounds. That's the joy of this pattern. There's no particular size. You can make yours as long or as short as you want yours to be. All right, that's what I love about this. It's a very versatile pattern. All right, it was a little tricky, you know, having to make sure you keep it into a slip stitch and not turn it into a half double crochet stitch like I was doing quite a few times. All right, so here we are at the end. All right, we're going to work on that last bit. Now, if you didn't know this, I do tend to pop my stitch markers in my threads so that if someone did come around and pull at it, it's not going anywhere. Okay, it's a little tip I use in a lot of my videos, and there you go. All right, not all of them, just some of them. That's right. Well, I was about to keep going, but we're not going to keep going. What we're going to do, you would have gotten to your very last stitch and you would have put your half double crochet slip stitch in there. All right. So what we're going to do is take undone the last 2 stitches like that. All right. And this way, before your stitch marker, you have 2 stitches that you need to complete. Now, instead of doing your half double crochet slip stitch, you're going to do a normal single crochet, not a slip stitch, but just a normal single crochet in those back loops. All right, so what we're going to do, let's get a nice close up here, there. So there's your normal back loop like you were going to. You're not going to put your yarn over your hook. You're just going to pop your hook in the back loop like normal, pull a loop through, 2 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through both those loops. That's a single crochet. You're going to do that again in the very next stitch, single crochet in that stitch right there. And now you've got your last stitch there, right? We've been putting our stitch marker in that all the way through our rounds. Take it out for now, and instead of doing your half treble or your single, you're going to do a slip stitch in the back loop. So pop your hook in that back loop as though you were doing a normal single, pull the loop through like so, and pull it through to the loop on your hook, and you're going to do it in the very next stitch as well. Pop your hook in, pull the loop through, and pull it through to the loop on your hook. You're not going to knot it. What you're going to do is grab your scissors and give yourself a nice long thread to weave in and give it a cut. We're going to pull that loop right through the stitch, and what you'll have is it'll be lifted up like that. So what you're going to do is you're going to thread your needle. I hope I can do it in one go, otherwise I have to do it off air. Oh no, there we go. Usually I do this off air because it drives me batty. Thread your needle. Thread that needle. So what you're going to do is now from here, you're going into the back loop of your very next stitch. Pop your thread down there like so, all the way through like that. Yeah. Then you're going to skip over a stitch and go into the back of the next stitch, and it's through the whole stitch. Yeah. Pull it through. Whoops, like so. I'm going to get my tail a bit longer. Oh no, it's pulling. Okay, pull it through like so. You don't want it pulling. You're going to go into the stitch before, the one you first started from, just there. Pop your needle in and pulling it through. And what you've done is you've straightened your piece. Now you can see a tiny little lift, but not as bad as it was before. Now turning it inside out like so, and with this tail, wherever you want to go, I might go down here because it'll thicken this area up a bit. You need to weave it in through some threads. And what you're doing is you're splitting. This is cotton, by the way, so be careful with this. This can really become annoying, splitting cotton. You're splitting cotton. Now, it can really, really drive you batty, cotton. It does with me. Just check that you can't see the needle from the front. Yeah? And pull it through the back, like so. Then you're going to go back in the same direction, but in a different area. So you're going to, this is where you're in now, where I am in. I'm just going to pop into this stitch right here and drop down to the next row. Now, ordinarily I wouldn't be, I am pedantic about my weaving in ends, but this one's a little more pedantic because it's cotton. And cotton, really trying to weave that in is just drives me batty. It really does. So there you go. So make sure you can't see your needle. Yeah, I can see it through the gap, but not through the actual thread, which is normal. Yeah. So you pull that through that way, just being careful, making sure you don't pull too tight. Yeah. So guess what you're going to do? You're going to go back again, but I'm going back up the top again and just going through some more stitches, not in the same area. I am literally splitting threads. Now, a lot of people, this is a no-no in crochet. Yeah, a lot of people say you shouldn't do it, but splitting the threads helps keep your tail in. And that's why I do it a lot. But, you know, it is a no-no. I should have checked the front. It should be okay. It's okay. Once you've done it 2, 3, and if you're very pedantic, you can do it a 4th time, but I'm going to leave it there. Once you've done that, if you just give it a tug, because you've split threads, that is not coming out. So put it back through your normal side and have a careful look at your piece. There is a tiny rise, but not as bad as before. Yeah? All right, now you've got this little guy down here, and I noticed another thing with this guy. You may actually have a little bit of spaces here. That's just from loose crocheting, and that happens a lot to me with single crochets. I'm not sure if it happens to other people. So if you wanted to, you could fill up some of those gaps. You really could. I'm not going to fuss too much about it, but turn it inside out again, grabbing your sewing needle. All right, so here we go. Okay, so once again, have a careful look at your piece from afar, and you can see how it's taller on this side and shorter on this side. You're going to do yet again the same. It's a little different here because you can't actually go back and do single crochets, but you can actually use your thread to go through and make this even. All right, so what you're going to do is go down into that last stitch somewhere there. Just pull a bit of thread, not a lot, because you don't want it to be seen from the outside. So I just literally split some thread there. Make sure you can't see it. And pull that loop through like that. Yeah. Then, if you are anything like me and you have a gap there, you could actually just pop your needle through the gap, and it will close it up a little bit like that. Gives it like almost like a little post look. So you pull it through like so. Not too difficult, not too tight, sorry. Or it will be noticed. So right now it just looks like a post. It's actually the thread, yeah? Then you're going to go, let's see if I can do this where you can see it. It's a bit difficult with the green, isn't it? I found it very odd with the green, trying to be able to see the green online. Over the stitch, that's the stitch we're in. We're jumping over it and going into some stitching below. Make sure you can't see the needle, which I can, but that's okay because I'm trying to make that post. Yeah, now this is not necessary. If you want to just weave your tail in, you can. I want to make a post so it looks even, yeah? So there's my little post right there. I pulled that too tight, sorry about that. Just stretch it out a little bit. And there's my little post, so it's starting to look a little even. Now all I want to do is weave my ends in up and down through this stitched area. And I'm going to do it up the top, which will give my flatter or thinner edge a bit of a lift. All right, so there we are, making sure that it's not too noticeable. So what you're going to see a little bit of the thread. That's what we want, because we want to straighten up this area and make it look like there's no bump there. It's a slight lift, yeah? Turn it over, going back in the other direction, but not dropping down the stitch, staying in the same stitch, but skipping over one of the stitches. So this is the area we just came out of. We're going to skip over it and go into another thread and just split, which is an absolute no-no, as I said, your stitch across. Again, this wasn't necessary. You could have just weaved it in and had your little bump. That's fine. But yours truly, you know, I'm a real big stickler in this area. And down we go again, splitting all the yarn right through. I think we're done, and that's it. I think we're done now. Now, if you want to do more, you can. If you want to bring your thread down here, you can, whichever suits you. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to turn it inside out and show you the base. And you can see a tiny little lift, but not as bad as it was before. And if you give that top area a little bit of a stretch, it sorts itself out, yeah? And the other side, you don't know where it is. It doesn't matter. All you need to do now is pop it on Dad's wrist, and he now officially has a gorgeous green sweatband. All right, so thank you very much to the lovely Jan for her colour combination of our Father's Day project, which we just scraped in because our Father's Day is actually this Sunday coming, and it's Friday today. Thank you very much for joining us, and once again a special thank you to Jan for her colour combination. I'll see everyone on our live this Saturday 10 a.m. Melbourne, Australia time. Ciao for now.